Well, how much does it cost to make a penny? You might be surprised. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you're at the site, go to the top of the page. There's a link there that says Ask Prudent Money. Send in your question, and I will get that question answered for you. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, what if I told you the U.S. penny, the mighty 1 cent, could maybe point to what is wrong with politicians today and why we face $36 trillion. And incidentally, we are not too far away from the next milestone, which is $37 trillion. I would suspect by this time next week we'll actually be there. You can go to usdebtclock.org and you can track it. A interesting story about the penny, and I think there's a lot of meaning to this story that you might not catch. So talk a little bit about this. The U.S. Mint has made its final order of penny blanks and plans to stop producing the coin when these run out. It looks like there will be an immediate annual savings of $56 million just by stopping penny production. President Donald Trump announced that he had ordered his administration to cease production of the 1 cent coin. His advocates for ditching the penny cite its high production costs. Now get this. And tell me where this makes sense. I mean, it's almost funny, kind of, right? Almost 4 cents per penny is, according to the U.S. Mint, once again, almost 4 cents per 1 penny to produce a penny. So if you want 1 penny, you have to spend 4 pennies to create the 1 penny that they're going to put into production. It costs 14 cents to create a nickel. Are you seeing a really bad trend here? 14 cents to create a nickel. Now, I appreciate the fact that the president is doing something about this, because it's absolutely absolutely wasteful, especially when you're quickly becoming a cashless society. And I'm not talking about digital dollars. I'm just talking about people are just not carrying cash with them. You just don't see it very often. But why not go ahead and say, hey, we save money here. Let's save money and not produce the nickel. Or I don't know. I mean, maybe you need the nickel, maybe you need the dime, but do you need the quarter? But you definitely don't. I don't think that you need the penny. But a nickel, 14 cents to mint. That's just ridiculous. And once again, that number, 56 million, would be saved, an immediate annual savings, if they stopped minting the penny, which is what they're going to do. So what happens to America's 114 billion pennies once the U.S. stops making them? Well, for those of you who like the penny, the American penny isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's been minted for more than 230 years. Now, see if you can grasp that. 230 years they've been going through this process, and they estimate there are an estimated 114 billion pennies currently in circulation, but they are, quote unquote, severely underutilized, according to the Treasury Department, because many are at home You can guess it in your jars and junk drawers, and some are just forgotten location gathering dust. I've got a very big box of coins, of pennies and quarters and nickels and all that kind of stuff at my house that one day I'm going to take somewhere and see how much cash that we have for it. But once again, you've got something that we spent $56 billion on. $56 million on. And so much of it, I would love to know the percentage that is not in circulation, that should be in circulation. The electronic transactions, such as credit and debit card purchases, will continue to be down to the penny. There's this, and Leonard, they said that with only cash transactions being rounded. There's a saying in retail, never lose a customer over a penny. I never really thought of it in these terms, but it applies even more here. I think if someone wants to pay with pennies, most retailers will err on the side of making those customers happy. You could debate all kinds of things when it comes to taking a coin out of circulation, but what you can't get around, if you're arguing the point, is that it costs 4 cents for every 1 penny to make. That is one act of a wasteful use of money, and reproducing something that we clearly could do without. Now, here's where all this goes, is where I'm driving this topic with politicians and wasteful spending. You know, when you think about $56 million, I don't know about you, but if I had $56 million in my bank account, I could do some really cool things. I think we all could. There's a lot of ministries that could take just a small portion of that money and do some unbelievable work. But to politicians, to the Treasury, to the president, look at that as, well, it's just $56 million. I mean, think about the government's I don't know if they're still going to do it, but they're thinking about doing it. They are wanting to organize a military parade, and it's going to cost something like $89 million. And I doubt anybody's going to be better off because we had a military parade. But it is $89 million. I think that was the number, but you get the point. It's close anyway, $89 or $90 million just spent in organizing a military parade. It from the standpoint of politicians, do they look at this money as it's just monopoly money? Because after all, 37 trillion or 36 trillion, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, that's probably next week, $36 trillion worth of debt. Yeah, $100 million just doesn't look like much. Which brings me to Luke 16:10. It says, Jesus teaches, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. Goes on to say, this verse, this is actually the commentary, this verse underscores the idea that our integrity in minor matters is indicative of our trustworthiness in more significant responsibilities. It suggests that faithfulness in small tasks is foundational to being entrusted with greater ones. And what a great verse in the Bible that talks about it's what you do and how you handle the small responsibilities. And the small responsibilities in comparison to the $36 trillion worth of debt, spending $100 trillion, it's no big deal. Or spending $56 million to produce a penny. Just doesn't make sense. But it's how we handle those small things, how we attend to the details, how we care for and are grateful for the opportunity to work on the small things, how we put our time, our integrity, and everything that goes into making it a good use of stewardship. That shows that you're ready for the big things that God wants to bless you with. But if you ever wondered why isn't that big door opening for me? Why isn't that opportunity coming that is so big? What you might do is take a step back, think of what it says in Luke 16:10, and maybe there's your answer. I know that's been very convicting in my life, and it's so very easy to take the I want to say the road less traveled, but it is the road less traveled. If you had a choice to say which one do you want to, long term get you to where you want to go, it's managing small items or managing the big ones. It's how if you have not learned how to manage the small things, it really won't matter if the other is big or not, because you'll probably do something to mess it up if you haven't invested the time in the small things. Once again, what a great verse. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I got to talk about, and it's interesting because last week I had written this down to talk about identity theft. And, and I want to talk about this because years ago, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, if a major company like a Home Depot was hacked into a cyber attack and just unbelievable amounts of information, people's personal account information, so probably not Social Security numbers, but credit card numbers, and all this was stolen, it would be on the front page. It would be a news alert on CNBC. Today, you could have 150, 200 million consumer files stolen, and nobody doesn't even make the first page of the internet, or it might garnish a little spot of real estate at the bottom of the page. And we've become we've just gotten to a point to where, another cybersecurity hack. And we've also gotten into a dangerous place where we assume that's not our problem today. That's just never going to happen to me. Well, as you were not paying attention to the massive amounts of personal information that are taken, it seems like on a daily basis, what these thieves are doing is they're putting this information together. So information that they got out of one hack added to information they got out of another hack, information that they put it together, and they've got this person's somewhat of, or most of his or her financial life that they can call and use to scare you and create an opportunity for them to steal more information from you, like credit card numbers. Yesterday, I was in the car with my wife, and it drives you crazy when these numbers you don't, the people who call you and it says spam, or you don't know the numbers. It drives her crazy because I always answer the phone. I don't say anything. I just want to see what it's about. And if I could actually borrow all the money that these people say that I could borrow, that I've gotten these phone calls, you've gotten them, I'd probably have $500 million in the bank. But they're always telling me my loan's approved. Yesterday, I called and they said, "Is this Robert Brooks?" And they started it off like many a bank would do when their customer had just been or had fraud committed against them. And so it got my attention. Now, you would think, as much as I've talked about this, as much as I've written about it, that I would hesitate and immediately think it's a scam. But they just kind of sucked me in. And what was really interesting is that they called 3 times in a row. I've never had that happen. And I wouldn't accept the call. And I thought, my wife goes, maybe you should just check it out, see what it is. And so they were calling from Citibank. They were wanting to report that let me know that there was a $1,200 expense charged to my credit card, and that's not a prime card that I really use. So I thought that's really odd. And they said, yes, there's a gentleman by the name of something Wilson, and he has gotten a hold of your Social Security number, and he's using it to commit identity theft. Well, if that was truly Citibank, I mean, you really got to think through it. If that was truly Citibank, then Citibank would care what this guy's doing unless it was happening on my card, their card. But it wasn't like they were creating a new account. They were telling me that this guy is charging $1,200, which is enough to get my attention. And I needed to do something about it. Well, I said, well, can you close the card? I was kind of catching on by this point. And she says, is your Social Security number the last 4 digits? And she used the last 4 digits of my Social Security number. Of course, they don't have the Social Security number, or they wouldn't be making that call. Because what they're fishing for is the real information, probably the credit card. And so she says to me, well, you really need I need to be able to transfer you to our fraud division, and you need to get Experian hooked up to your accounts to where you're notified if anything else unusual appears. I said, well, I'd love to, but I go, I've got I've got really all major credit monitoring services, and in some cases I have 2 because a credit card has them. I said, I think I'm in pretty good shape. The minute I get off the phone call, another person calls from a different company and says, Robert Brooks? I said, yes. She goes, you've been victim of a credit card ID theft. And so she told me, I said, well, that wasn't me. And she goes, well, we will turn down the verification of it and it won't go through. And I said, well, are you going to cancel my card? She goes, yes, we're going to cancel your card. And she immediately got off the phone. Not 10 seconds after I got off the phone with these other people. Just absolutely strange. But what it really says is, you know how many times your phone rings a day and it's spam or worse or whatever it is. And can you imagine the number of people who are falling for that and the number of identity theft activity that's going on? So I called Citigroup. Nobody called them. In fact, she said a person wouldn't call you, AI would call you. We have a whole AI set up that would call you and they would fix it and cancel your card. I said, don't I need to cancel my card now? No, you don't need to cancel your card. She said, obviously they didn't have the information but they were probably about to try to get it from you. So they're, gathering information. The more information they gather, the bigger the heist can be, I guess, is what gets there. So there's a lot to learn from this. And the first thing is, I'll be the first to admit that I hesitated and was concerned for maybe 10 seconds. And but that was it. But it does bear, I think, some good advice that we need to share and talk about and remind ourselves when it comes down to our credit and how we handle it and how we take care of it. First of all, I'm a huge believer, and you know this, a big believer in credit monitoring. Credit monitoring that makes sense. There's a lot of credit monitoring and ID services out there that I don't believe make sense. The ones that claim to be able to catch everybody, cover every Joe Smith that's out there, and halt every identity theft that's going on. I just don't believe it to be true. So I'm talking about a credit monitoring service that monitors all 3 credit reporting agencies and will contact you if anything changes on your credit. That's what you need, without question. If you can shut down, freeze your credit, that's really the best way to go. If you want to be over the top, get both. But if you do freeze your credit, then nobody can get in unless they have a special code and you are the only one that has the code. So credit monitoring, absolutely, it's not that expensive. I think it totally makes sense. Every month, audit your credit cards. Your credit card, if someone did an unauthorized, tough word to say, charge on your credit card, they will remove it. The credit card company will remove it. That's by law, they have to. And then be very careful with debit cards. And I can't stress that enough, because a debit card is direct entree into your bank account. And that is the worst scenario. Not that a bank will not would not correct the problem and give you your money back, but you do have a time limit that you have to get that done with the bank, or they'll consider it, or they can consider it lost and gone for good. Then you'd really be in trouble. But still, start getting into the habit of checking to see what your charges are on a monthly basis. Be careful with debit cards. Finally, what I call the golden rule of identity theft is anytime that you're approached by a phone call, by a computer email, by someone showing up at your front door, whatever it might be, you were approached and they ask you for any information, you shut that down right there and call the credit card company or the whatever it represents and confirm that it's legit. Probably isn't. Simple things like change your passwords and pay attention to what's around you and people around you. I mean, there's just so many different ways that a fraud can be committed. But I really do believe this. If you take the proper caution and protect yourself, you are less likely for that to happen. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.